They say the greatest fear a person can have is losing their memory. But I never truly understood it until I saw my own mother slowly fade away. It wasn't like a sudden tragedy that happened in an instant. No, it crept up quietly, step by step, stealing her smile, her memories, her confidence in the world. And every day I watched the woman who had given me life forget her own. I am her son, but I am also a scientist. I have studied the human brain for years, researched it, dissected it into millions of cells and connections, believed I knew its secrets. And yet I remained powerless in the face of what had happened. Because how could you accept that the brain, the most perfect organ in our body, could begin to destroy itself? This is the story of my mother. This is the story of my pain. But it is also the story of science, which began searching for answers over 100 years ago and still has not found definitive ones. The story of the man who first saw this darkness, the Dr. Alois Alzheimer. The story of me, his distant student, who one day realized that love and science can come together in one battle. I always thought I knew the human brain. I had dedicated my life to it, studying its silent codes, dissecting it into cells and neurons, delving into the mysteries of memory and consciousness. I was sure that my knowledge would make me strong, that when the moment of testing came, I would be able to protect those I loved. But I was wrong, because no scientific article, no microscope could prepare me for what I saw in my own home. My mother has always been the light in my life, the woman who remembered every little thing, my first words, my defeats and victories, even the colors of the notebooks I used in school. She was my living archive, my support. But one day I noticed her stop in the middle of the room and ask me where I was going. It was a small thing, at first glance. We all forget things. I smiled, hugged her, and told her it was okay. But a chill of anxiety was already growing inside me. Over time, such moments became more frequent. She forgot the stove was on, asked me the same thing several times, lost familiar paths home. Once, looking me in the eye, she did not recognize me. And at that moment the world stopped. I, her son, her child, her pride, became a stranger. I tried to calm myself down. Aging, fatigue, maybe depression. But the scientist in me was screaming, this isn't just a coincidence. This is a system. This is a process. This is a disease. I began to search for answers, rereading everything I knew about brain pathologies. I found a story that shocked me to the core. The year is 1901. The young German psychiatrist Alois Alzheimer meets his patient Augusta Deter. She is only 51, but she forgets words, confuses events, suspects her husband of infidelity, and cannot find her way around her home. Writing down her answers, Alzheimer hears the same intonations that I heard in my mother's voice. I have lost myself, Augusta would say. And I heard in these words an echo of my mother, who asked me every night why this was happening to her. When Augusta died, Alzheimer performed an autopsy on her brain, and there he found something that made the whole world reconsider its ideas about aging. In her brain, he saw deposits, plaques, and tangles, foreign formations that destroyed neurons like rust-sharpened steel. He described this case in detail. It was then that the name was born, which now sounds like a sentence for millions of families around the world, Alzheimer's disease. I read these notes and felt as if an invisible brotherhood had formed between me and Alzheimer's. His Augusta and my mother were two women separated by time, but united by suffering. He had taken the first step in this dark story. Now it was my turn. But will I have enough strength? Will my son, even if he is a scientist, be able to stop the invisible enemy that steals memories, faces, and love? I tried to lie to myself for a long time. I told myself it was just age, that everyone forgets things sometimes. But when I saw my mother get lost in her own room, pick up a photo and not recognize the face in it, I couldn't hide from the truth any longer. I sat next to her in the evenings and listened to her repeat the same questions over and over again. I answered patiently, over and over again, even though something was tightening in my chest. She looked at me with big eyes and whispered, "Why is this happening to me?" And I couldn't find the words. I, her son, who had once run to her with every trouble, could now not give her an answer. The hardest part was watching her slowly lose parts of herself. She had always been strong, the woman who held our whole family together. She remembered the stories of her childhood, and I loved hearing them as a child. And now those stories were disappearing. Day by day, she seemed to fade away, like a candle burning down. Sometimes I would catch her smile, and for a moment it seemed to me that everything was as before. She would laugh, hug me, and I would smell her hair, the same one I had known since childhood. But the next moment she would ask, "Who are you?" And then my heart would break in two. I began to write down her words, as if I wanted to keep them for myself. I wrote down what was left, fragments of phrases, some random memories, little crumbs of her past. Each note was a treasure for me. I was afraid that one day she would not say even that. Life had become a strange struggle. I knew I couldn't save her, but I couldn't give up either. All I could do was be there. Hold her hand when she was lost in her own thoughts. Answer the same questions. Smile even when I wanted to scream. It hurt me to see my mother disappear, but it hurt even more to know that she felt this fear herself. And I promised myself, as long as she was around, I would remember for two. I couldn't sit idly by. Every morning, when I went into my mother's room, I saw her getting confused over little things. She could put on her sweater backwards, hide bread in the shoe cabinet, or search for her comb for a long time, which she held in her hands. My heart sank. I understood that this was not just old age. This was something else, something more terrible, invisible. I started keeping a little diary. I wrote down every incident, every change in her behavior. At first it seemed unnecessary, but then I realized that these notes helped me stay calm and see the whole picture. Today, Mom forgot my birthday. I wrote one evening and felt tears well up in my eyes. Not because I wanted a gift or attention, but because this was no longer the mother I had known all my life. I began to spend more time with her. We walked together in the park. I showed her flowers, told her about trees, as she used to do for me. I tried to revive in her memory what was dear to me and to her. Sometimes it worked. For a moment her eyes would light up, and she would laugh, as she used to. But in a minute everything would dissolve into a fog. There was a struggle inside me. I wanted to scream from powerlessness, but at the same time I knew that I had to be strong for her. I began to wonder how to help such people. I read articles, looked for stories of other families who had faced this, and every time I found similar descriptions, I was overcome by a mixture of fear and relief. Fear, because I saw that we were not alone in this pain. Relief, because others were also struggling, so there was hope. One day, when my mother was sitting by the window and staring at the sunset for a long time, she quietly asked, "What is your name?" And I felt the ground disappear from under my feet. I took her hand and answered, "I am your son, and I will always be there." After that day at the window, I realized I couldn't handle it anymore. It was stronger than me, stronger than our memories. I gathered all my courage and took my mother to the doctor. It was scary, because deep down I knew that I would hear something that would change our lives forever. The office was quiet, only the ticking of the clock. The doctor listened to me attentively, looked at my mother, asked simple questions. "What day is it today? Where are we? What is my name?" She smiled, trying to answer, but her words fell apart like sand through her fingers. I sat next to her, clenching my fists, and at that moment I wanted to exclaim, "She's different. She's kind. She's loving. It's not her fault that she forgot." After the examination, the doctor quietly uttered words that were like a verdict for me. "It's probably Alzheimer's." And I felt the world freeze for a moment. Everything was mixed up in my head: fear, anger, despair. But my mother was sitting next to me. My mother, who had just yesterday stroked my hair and said that I would always remain a child to her. And then I realized I had no right to give up. I took action. I read everything I could find about this disease. I made appointments for my mother, asked doctors how to make her days easier. Together we created little prompts at home, a calendar on the wall, notes with reminders, photos signed with names. I tried to make the world around her simpler, clearer. But the most important thing was something else. I decided not to let this disease take away the most valuable things from us: warmth, closeness, love. Every evening we drank tea together. I told her stories from our childhood, the same ones she had once told me. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she looked at me in surprise, as if she were seeing me for the first time. But I held her hand and repeated the same thing. I am with you. Always. The more I encountered this disease, the more I felt we are not alone. In the queue to the doctor, in articles, on forums, everywhere there were the same sons and daughters who held their parents' hands and did not know what would happen next. And then I had a desire to act not only for myself, but also for them. I started going to family meetings where they shared experiences of caring for people with Alzheimer's. At first I was silent, listening, but with each new story, I felt our pain merge into one common one. There I understood for the first time. Even when we are powerless in the face of the disease, we can support each other. And this support is sometimes more important than any medicine. Then I started helping others, offering advice on simple things I did at home: how to arrange things, how to sign photos, how to create a peaceful routine. And when someone thanked me, saying that it had truly made life easier for their loved ones, I felt a small spark of hope. But still, the strength I found most in my mother. Even when she forgot my name, even when she confused me with someone else, there was still tenderness in her eyes. She could take my hand and say, "You're good. I feel it." And that was enough to make me believe again. I began to write the story of our struggle, not to make anyone feel sorry for me, but to show that behind every diagnosis there is not only an illness, but also love. A love that holds on when memory fades. And then I realized, maybe I won't be able to save my mother, but I can give meaning to our struggle, to help other families not lose faith and not be left alone. And this became my new life, my new mission. Days, weeks, months passed. Mom grew weaker, her memories less and less visible from the fog of oblivion. And I saw it every day. It wasn't an explosion of emotion. It wasn't a sudden tragedy. It was a quieter, slower escape. She could still smile at me. She could still hold my hand. But somewhere deep inside her world, there was an emptiness. One evening she sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames, and for a moment her face lit up with the eyes I had known all my life. She said softly, "I remember you. A little." And those words felt like the most powerful gift. I held her close and whispered, "I will always be there. I remember you for the two of us." I realized that she was gradually leaving, but not completely disappearing. In her hands, in her smile, in every look, there remained a love that could not be forgotten. And this was the greatest strength. Even when illness takes everything away, it cannot take away what we feel for each other. I realized that our struggle is not in vain. My mother taught me love, patience, and courage, and I must carry that on. I became the one who would keep her memory alive, the one who would help others, the one who would make the world a little warmer for those who faced the same darkness. And as I left the room, holding her hand in the last days, I knew I was losing my mother physically, but never in my heart. The love she gave me was stronger than any forgotten words, stronger than the disease itself. And I felt that she would always be with me, in my every action, in my every word, in my every desire to help another. Maybe it's not a victory over illness, but it's a victory over loneliness, over fear, over powerlessness. And in this victory, I found a meaning that will never disappear. Mom is gone. Her room is empty, but the scent of her spirit still lingers in the house, on the shelves, in old photographs, in every corner where she once was. And I feel her presence in me, in everything I do. I often remember her words, her smile, her small gestures, which have now become my treasure. Even in her oblivion, she taught me the most important thing: To love means to remember for two, to support when it's scary, to hold your hand when the world seems dark. I have continued to work with other families struggling with Alzheimer's. Every story, every day of helping others, reminds me that our love never dies. It becomes a force that can warm, teach, support. I see in the eyes of those people the same hope that my mother once saw in my eyes, and it makes me feel like we are together carrying light through the darkness. Love and memory are things that illness cannot take away, and I realize that a mother's true legacy is not photographs or things, not names and dates, but this unbreakable ability to love and remember even when everything else disappears. When I look at the world, at people, at those who need help, I feel that her lesson lives within me. And I will never be afraid of the dark again, because I know, even in darkness you can find light if you hold it in your heart. My mother is gone, but she left me the most important thing, a love that is stronger than illness, stronger than time, stronger than anything we can lose. And now I pass it on to all who face the same fear, the same darkness. Because where there is love, there will always be hope.